Hi, welcome to Naptime Nutrition. I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition and Toddler Test Kitchen. And speaking of Toddler Test Kitchen, I'm as excited as you are. Okay, well, hopefully you're really excited to get my dates at the farm, South Mountain. I'm very excited about that, and they're going to be along any day now. So if you want to be on top of that and know exactly when Toddler Test Kitchen is going to be available in the fall through the spring, join my newsletter. I'm going to put that website in the comments after I broadcast, and you can really be on top of that information and get registered right away. Spaces are limited, and last year almost every class was completely sold out, so you want to be one of the first to know. We have a great lineup of really fun recipes, and the farm is a fantastic location. So what are we talking about today? Well, it's back to are returning. Okay, connection available now. All right. So school lunch, kids are returning home with uneaten lunch, and parents want to know, what can I do? What should I send them? Why aren't they eating? These are their favorite foods. So let's talk about what goes on at school lunch. So first thing to address, what to pack. I have a list. I'm happy to send it to you. PM me, email me, yaffi@babybloomnutrition.com. Happy to send you the master snack and meal list, which of course doesn't have everything in the world on it, but is a great place to start. What you want to do with that, assuming your child is 5 years old and up, sometimes 4 years old, depending on how possible conversation like this is with your child, is sit down with them and go through each food. Talk about, would you eat this? Do you like this? Don't make any assumptions, because kids change their minds very quickly. And so if you're, thanks for the thumbs up. You get one right back. If you assume that your child isn't going to like raw broccoli, but it turns out they've changed their mind and are interested, you're not going to know if you make that assumption. So have an open conversation with your child about all of the different foods and snacks you usually send. You can use my list as a starting point. You want to avoid judgment. You want to avoid preconceived notions. As I mentioned, kids change their mind all the time. You want to avoid bargaining. If I send you 2 Hershey's Kisses, will you eat a hard-boiled egg? No, just stay away from that type of conversation. It's not going to give a good impression to your child on the foods that you're sending. It's going to send them a charged message, which is what we're trying to get away from. The whole idea is food enjoyment and food neutrality. And when you introduce bargaining into the mix, you start to put a lot of psychology on it, and that's not what we want around food. We want the kids to open their lunch, see food, eat what they want, not eat what they don't want. And so you want to stay away from bargaining and also rewarding. You don't want to see an empty lunchbox when the kid comes home and give them a prize for that, because then you're rewarding them for eating rather than rewarding them for listening to their own body signals. We don't know how hungry a child is, and as I'll get into in this segment, there are a lot of factors that determine exactly how much they're going to eat at any given seating. And that's at home and that's at school, but school has its own challenges, and we're going to talk about that. You want to be sure to include some of their favorites. You can include some things that are not their favorite also. I mean, if every meal is made up of their favorite foods all the time, it's extremely limiting, and it doesn't encourage them to experiment a little bit, to try some new things that they haven't liked before. You also want to have some balance. Yeah, you want it to be tasty, but you don't want to have Gushers and chocolate and a peanut butter marshmallow sandwich, and you want to have some balance there. So what I like to do when I pack my own kids' lunches is I have a main dish, which is usually protein heavy, and then I have a fruit and a vegetable and something crunchy and an applesauce. And that's how I keep it simple. So they get a different lunch every day, but it always follows that pattern. Sometimes the something crunchy is going to be those crunchy sesame crackers from Trader Joe's, and sometimes it's going to be that brownie crunch thing that's really big now that you can get. It looks kind of like potato chips, except it's brownies. Yeah, okay, I've done that. And that's fine. You should include a treat in their lunch, and I'll get to that as well. So she never eats anything. There are a lot of reasons why your child may not eat at school. And the number one thing you want to remember, the number one thing I want you to remember, is that most of child's nutrition comes from home. They're at school for a good amount of the day, but you're still giving them breakfast, you're still giving them dinner, and you're still giving them an after-school snack. And we're also going to talk about that, the importance of the after-school snack and the timing of that and how it plays off with dinner. So maybe your child isn't eating a lot because their lunchbox is difficult to open, or that there's a food item that's difficult to open. Sometimes we need to practice this at home. Sometimes you should serve dinner in their lunchbox, and everyone can have a lunchbox dinner at home. And it's something to make it a little bit more fun. You can invite a stuffed animal if you want, but the underlying secret here is you're looking to see how quickly can she access her lunch, how quickly can she open that pack of cookies that you sent, or unwrap her sandwich. How easy is it for your child to access the food that you sent? They are allotted a very small amount of time at school, which is its own issue. It could be its own nap time nutrition, but we have to be in control of the things that we can control. We can't control how much time they have. That's up to the school system. You are welcome to take your easy to open. Okay, I'm live again. Wow, that's frustrating. All right, there are certain foods that take too long to eat. So not only are you opening the lunchbox and opening the bento box or whatever kind of lunchbox you have in there, but there are certain foods that take a while. So apples can take a while. Maybe you want to slice them. A trick to slicing apples is use an apple slicer, and then you don't even have to do anything from there. Just take a rubber band and put it around the apple so that it stays whole in its apple container. You can check out my Instagram where I did a picture of that. It's very easy. A hard-boiled egg, you should peel it. Regardless of how important it is for your child to peel that egg, it takes time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time. Peel it for them, sometimes slice it for them. Oranges, peel it ahead of time. All of this stuff takes time. So look at the lunch that you're packing and think, how can I cut down on the amount of time it takes for my child to access the food inside of this item? You can slice the banana. If you take a banana, you slice the skin down the side, and you don't have to spray anything on it. That slit will turn a little bit brown, but it's not going to affect the banana inside, but it makes it easier for your child to peel the banana. And, Zahav is watching, hey. So sensory overload. Here's the thing. We talk a lot about how a sensory overload can impact appetite. And for kids who are sensitive, that may mean that strong smells from cooking, or certain foods that smell strong, or sharp flavors, or a food that's too crunchy, that can be really difficult for a child who has sensory sensitivity. But any child can be overwhelmed in a sensory way in the cafeteria. Even your most insensitive child is going to be affected by the fact that they're not at a table with their 4 favorite family members. They're in a cafeteria with 200 other kids, and the noise and the chatter and the smells and the sounds that come along with that entire experience. Especially when a child is first starting school and isn't used to that atmosphere, that can be very overwhelming, and that can definitely affect their appetite. So if your child is coming home after you sent all of their favorite foods and you've tested it and they can access everything very easily, they're still coming home with a full lunchbox, it could be that it's just too loud in there. And there's not much that you can do about that. You can discuss with the teacher to see if there is a solution, but for the most part, you want your child to enjoy a sensory and a social experience at school. And so taking them aside and giving them a quiet place to eat is not necessarily going to work well with other objectives at school. So it may be that you just need to manage it at home. Give them a big breakfast. Be prepared with a good solid snack the second they get off the bus or the second they get in the car. That may be the best way to manage that particular situation. Talk to your child about it. See what they tell you. Ask for suggestions. Sometimes we get in a rut. And you can ask your child, hey, did someone else bring something that looked interesting? Or did they serve anything in the cafeteria that looked interesting to you? In my house, we keep kosher, which means that my children are not exchanging food with anyone else at the cafeteria. I hope not. And it means that they're not buying school lunch also. So I'm sure to ask them at least a couple times a week if they've seen anything that looks interesting that I could replicate and send with them. It's a good way to expand your menu, and it's a good way to show your kids that they're involved in this, and you can have a conversation. And they can say, hey, so-and-so brought Hershey's Kisses in their lunch, can I also have? And you know what? The answer to that is yes. Unless they're dairy intolerant, in which case you're going to go with the Enjoy Life brand. Not a sponsored plug, but they're awesome. So damage control. I alluded to this a little bit. I'm a big advocate of division of responsibility, which means that the parent is in charge of the when, what, and where of meals. When it's served, which we're not in control of at school, where it's served, also not in control of at school, and what is served. That's where we have control. So with school lunch, that is the extent of our control, what we put in the lunchbox. The child is in charge of whether they eat and how much they eat. They are still in charge of that at school. This is not a perfect situation. And I've been called on this public speaking as well. You cannot replicate an ideal situation in a cafeteria. You have to roll with what you're given. You are given an imperfect situation as far as location, as far as distraction, and as far as time. And you just have to go with it because it's not in your control. And it's really best in parenting and in many aspects of life to look at a situation and say, how much control do I actually have over this? And use that when determining how you're going to react to any given situation. So that's division of responsibility at lunch. You pack a balanced lunch and let it go. You can practice at home, which I mentioned. This is a great idea for, especially when your child is starting school or if you're buying a new lunchbox. Everyone has a lunchbox at dinner and they get to open it, and you watch to see how accessible your child's food is. If it's not very accessible, you may need to work with them on how to open it, or you may need to invest in a different lunchbox that will be a little bit more accessible to them so that they can meet their nutrition needs with the time allotted. Provide favorites, including a treat. I mentioned Hershey Kisses a couple times just because chocolate. It's important to provide a treat for your child. So what's the difference between a treat and a snack? Okay, this should be its own topic, I'm sure. But a treat it's a dessert. It's something sweet. It's something that doesn't have a whole lot of nutritional value. We eat it because it tastes good. And it's important for kids to be exposed to that, because if they're never exposed to things that have no other value other than their taste, then that's when they start trading. That's when they start hoarding. That's when they start hiding food and eating it when you can't see it, which carries its own risks. So we need to desensitize kids to sweets, to desserts, by providing it and not putting arbitrary rules around it. So take a couple Hershey's Kisses in their lunch or whatever it is for them. Be ready with a substantial snack when they get off the bus. And I am going to talk about, to circle back, a snack is a mini meal. It's going to have some amount of protein, some amount of carbohydrate, some amount of fat, hopefully some amount of fiber. A treat or dessert is something that we eat just because it tastes good. So that's the difference. Both are very important. Yes, I did say treats are very important. So be ready with a substantial snack when they get back from school. There are two ways that you can really do this, and which method you decide on is really just up to your family and your family dynamic and what works with your schedule. So some parents prefer to have dinner right after school. And it's just because the length of time from lunch until the end of school, until the bus ride home, until they actually get into your house, that's a long time. We advocate 2 to 3 hours between meals and snacks for kids, no longer than that, because then their appetite can actually get in the way of their appetite. That feeling of hunger can be so overwhelming and overstimulating that they don't even want to eat. They're just going to be cranky and in a bad mood. They're not going to do well at their homework. They're not going to do well at interacting with anyone, including you. So it's really good to be very prepared. If you're going the snack route, what you want to have is protein, fat, carbohydrate, all of that together. So here are a couple examples. Apple and cheese, or apple and peanut butter, crackers and hummus. Anything that combines those nutrients is going to be satisfying. It's going to give them that satisfied, full feeling that's going to carry them to dinner. If you decide to do an early dinner, which is a dinner at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, that's perfectly fine as well if that's what works better for your family dynamic. And it may be worth experimenting with this idea. So you're going to have dinner prepared when they come home. You sit down, everyone who's in the house sits down together and has a family meal. And then you're going to, instead of your traditional dinner, have a snack, because 2 to 3 hours after their dinner is an appropriate time for them to have a snack before the whole bedtime routine. So you're just going to switch it up, that you're going to have that substantial snack that I was advocating either right after school or 2 to 3 hours after dinner. So after school snack is a must. Some people, when they are trying to get their kids to eat more dinner, they don't do an after school snack because they want to build up their appetite. It's not the greatest way to go because, as I mentioned, there's a long time between lunch and when they get home. You're already getting into that hangry phase. So denying them a snack right after school is really just going to push them to their limits, which will end up pushing you to your limits. So it is very important to provide them with an after-school snack. They're going to get overwhelmed and cranky if you don't, which means you're going to get overwhelmed and cranky. So that's the whole thing with school lunch. If you are interested in my master snack list, you can email me. I'll add you to my mailing list, and I will send you that master snack list that you can use as a springboard for conversation with your child about which foods they would like and would not like. And the truth is that their preferences change all the time, so it's best to have that conversation every few months. We're just going to sit down and talk about what food you like in your lunch. And the thing is that they're going to be open to this conversation because they want tasty food in their lunchbox, and their definition of tasty food is going to change from month to month or minute to minute. So thank you for joining me for Naptime Nutrition. Next week, I'll be back 1:15 p.m. Arizona time. The rest of you people are about to change your clocks, so mind that. But for right now, 1:15 p.m. Arizona time, which is 4:15 p.m. on the East Coast, 1:15 on the West Coast, 9 a.m. Wednesday morning in New Zealand. Hi, Zima. And I'm not sure what the topic next week will be, but I have a whole list of fun topics to cover. So join my mailing list. You'll be on top of my dates for Toddler Test Kitchen. And if you're interested in doing a private Toddler Test Kitchen, I am available for that. And PM me for that or email yaffi@babybloomnutrition.com. Check out my Pinterest lists, pinterest.com/Yaffi, YAFFI. And I'm going to be coming out with some really awesome products. I'm doing an ebook on mindful eating with your kids. So this is a way to bring the family to family dinner and have a good time with your kids, keep them entertained and engaged while they enjoy their food in a safe and developmentally appropriate way. So if you are interested in that, join my mailing list. I'm going to put the link to that in the comments section. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for the reactions, thumbs up and whatnot. Thanks, and I will see you next week. You won't want to miss it.